Vanakkam. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here at the KLF, especially having a conversation with one of the very important women in the publishing industry, Nirmala Lakshman. And I'm so happy that I'm moderating a conversation with her, which is focusing on her very important book, The Tamils, A Portrait of a Community. Just like a warm-up, I want to share a few words about the book before I just indulge into a hearty tete-a-tete with her. See, this conversation is anchored in this book, The Tamils, A Portrait of a Community, a book that has quickly emerged as one of the most expansive and thoughtful explorations of Tamil identity in the recent years. So that way I feel that it is very unique. Also, it is not written in the conventional tone of a historian. That's a very unique feature of this book, which I would like to highlight, but a carefully crafted portrait which moves across time, geography, language, faith, and politics. What's very interesting here is it traces the Tamil story from ancient landscape. You all must be familiar of the fact that Tamil landscape is the only unique landscape which has this Sinai culture when compared to all the races all over the world. So she traces the Tamil story from ancient landscape and Sangam poetry through the great dynasties, devotional movements, maritime trade, colonial encounters, and modern political consciousness. See, what distinguishes this work from other works of such type is her ability to hold together the civilizational depth and everyday life. She traces everything from her roots in Kumbhakonam, how she was grounded in her Tamil roots, at the same time exposed to a metropolitan and a global culture in all the other arenas, but being proud about her Tamil identity, questioning about sometimes the doubts, going through different junctures in history, civilization, language, politics, and that way, this book is not just a linear listing of historical events or whatever it is. I see the human aspects of all the phases in Tamil history, language, civilization, beautifully crafted in a very, very erudite, at the same time, a familiar language with which you can immediately get groped into and go on reading. So this book has been brought after her 4 years of research, decades of journalistic engagement and cultural observation. As publisher and chairperson of the Hindu group of publications and formerly joint editor of the Hindu, she has long-shaped public conversations around literature, history, and society. So that way, I'm so happy to begin a conversation with her. Nirmala, first I would like to just ask you a question about the genesis of this book. See, it's a cliched question, but still, as a creator and a writer myself, before you take your pen and put your thoughts together, always any reader would think, what has made this writer to choose this topic, and where has she or he actually taken up the idea to formulate such a book? So I'd like to know about that.
First of all, it's wonderful to be here at the Kerala Lit Fest, and I thank Govind and Ravi DC for this honor and opportunity. And more than that, I would like to thank my dear friend, Dr. Thamizhachi Thangapandian, also known as Sumati, and she's our Member of Parliament from Chennai. So it's a great honor that, she's been elected twice, and I think it says a lot for what she's done for all of us. considering that getting into the Lok Sabha is a great difficulty. It may be easier to the Rajya Sabha for some people. But she's been a wonderful parliamentarian and speaking up for not just Tamil Nadu, but for the South's interest. So it's for me a great honor and a privilege to be here in conversation with her. This book that she asked me the origins of, I must confess, it actually came from my publisher friend, David R., who is the founder of Alice Book Company, a publishing house that focuses on very quality book publishing. And he was doing a series of community portraits. He did something on the Bengalis, on the Assamese, and then now the latest one is also on the Gujaratis. So David is somebody who wrote a column for the Hindu for about 20 years before he became a big star in the publishing firmament. So he asked me whether I would do this book about the Tamil community. I was very hesitant as I wanted to tell Sumati even earlier because I'm not an academic, but I have a background in English literature, and that doesn't sort of give me any particular skills in terms of as a historian or as a social scientist. But what David told me was he wants me to write for the ordinary person, the ordinary Tamilian who may not know, and indeed the non-Tamilian also, who may not know much about the history of these people. And I would like to say that because of the help of multiple experts, I managed to do this, and it took me 4 long years of writing, traveling, and research with some wonderful help from many people, including people who are archaeologists and historians who wrote and worked and did some wonderful work in Tamil. But their message and their contributions had not reached the Anglo-Saxon world. So I think I saw myself more as a messenger than anything. And I had some wonderful people who guided me throughout, not the least Dr. Sumati's brother, Honorable Finance Minister of the state of Tamil Nadu, Sangam, who's not only the finance minister, but he's a great passionate archaeologist, and he was one of those people who really opened doors for me and showed me what it is, a multifaceted human being, more on him later. But it's been the encouragement of people like that, Dr. Vedachalam, Arjuna Padurai from New York University, Gopal Gandhi, and many others who kind of pointed out to me the glories and the facets of what it meant to be a Tamil, and I learned much from that as well.
I'd really like you to commend for that, your efforts. I should say, meeting a lot of researchers and doing field work with carrying along with all your publishing work, that really shows tremendous interest in this particular subject. And I have a question about my brother also, about whose help you had mentioned towards the end of our conversation. Before plunging onto this, let me just have a quick question about, you have beautifully described the 5 landscapes of the Tamil Peninsula. As I had shared to you, the audience here, that Tamil race is a very unique race which has this 5 segregation of landscape, wherein the way of life is intertwined with their lifestyles, occupations, whatever it is, as part and parcel of the landscape, which we call as Mullai, Marudam, Neidal, Kurunji, and Palai. So each landscape carries emotional codes such as love, separation, longing, and endurance. So what does this reveal about how early Tamils understood the relationship between inner life and public life? Because you are a woman who balances beautifully your own inner journey, questioning yourself, how you grew up as a Tamil woman. At the same time, you have your own public life, catering to the publishing industry as well as also to the questions posed by the society in all your essays, all your writings. So how have you understood this relationship between these 2 extremes through the life which was lived by the ancient Tamils?
A wonderful, complex question, and I'm not sure I'll be able to do justice to what she's asked. And she's really, I think, gone into it in great detail. And I love the way she's linked the ancient Tamil to the modern day Tamil woman, who is also, in my view, I mean, I'm just one of the many millions of them who are balancing things and doing things together. She herself is an example, parliamentarian, college lecturer, who were once and now, I think, also a homemaker and all of that, and carrying forward the faith of the millions of people in our constituency, taking forward progress and development through the whatever she can do in Delhi, and bringing it back to the Tamil people. So I think in that sense, I would speak for her also and say, both of us were supported by various structures that gave us a step up. So first I'll just tackle the question of current day situation of Tamil women and say that, we all of us rely on structures that support us, and sometimes they are roadblocks, sometimes they are people who inspire us and push us forward. And then I would like to assume that in her case as well as mine, that while we have and we constantly will have even now, a lot of spaces where people come and block us from doing things, there's a kind of faith in the beauty of humanity, in the beauty of progress that allows us to go forward. I think one of the main cardinal principles of the ancient Tamil was Nilakanta Sastri, the historian, said that there was a joyous faith in good living. So I
beautifully said. உங்க எல்லாருக்குமே தெரியும், தமிழ் அதற்காக தான் உங்களுக்கும் சொல்றேன். அகநானூறு புறநானூறுன்னு இரண்டு வகையில தமிழ் செவ்வி இலக்கியங்களை தமிழர்கள் பிரித்து வாழ்ந்தார்கள். One is that the inner life, your aham. Puram is your responses to the outer life, the events that shook you, that actually make you to think about what's happening in the outside world. And a creator or a writer or anybody for that matter needs to respond to the outside world. We can't just sit in the gallery and be just watching the game. அதுதான் தமிழருக்கு இருக்கிற ஒரு மிகப்பெரிய முக்கியமான ஒரு குணம்னு சொல்றேன். தமிழர் என்றொரு இனம் உண்டு, தனியே அவருக்கு ஒரு குணம் உண்டு என்று சொல்வார்கள். Very unique. And I think you have beautifully brought that thing in your specific chapters about these landscapes.
வந்து எல்லாமே வந்து அகம்லேருந்து புறமுக்கு போறது, because what we believe was aham is the inner life, as she pointed out, and the puram is the outer life. So whether it's to do with love or grief, all of it flows into the outside landscape. The poetry of Sangam is, as she rightly pointed out, the cornerstone of that are the five pinays. The people lived close to the landscape, and the various, from the emblems of flowers to the actual physical geography of the place. While even their professions were determined by where they lived. Later on, it became a question of caste. But in the Sangam period, which is between 300 BCE to 300 CE, it was, I wouldn't say it was a completely glorious period, and we're not in the business of glorifying and romanticizing history. There must have been, there's so many ups and downs and challenges. Generally, there was an assumption that your inner life and your outer life are both equally important, whether it is to do with a mother grieving for her lost son, for a son that died in battle, because it also speaks to how he lived, the valor and the expression of kings who decided to send these young men to war. Same time, the mother, that warrior's mother faces an internal grief, but she's able to see this as a sacrifice to the outside, to the king, to the community that he belonged to. So the flow of aham lendu puram porthu is very, very common, and I think that's one of the cornerstones of Sangam poetry. And as she rightly said, these were the two divisions, and most of Sangam poetry reflects both the inner life as well as the outer life, and it's a beautiful demarcation, but at the same time there was no rigidity to it.
As an add-on, as a poet, as a Tamil regional poet, I would like to say that there were 49 women poets during Sangam age. Imagine, before Christ, 1st century BC, 49 women poets contributing to the Tamil literature, talking about their sensuality, their desires, their intertwined life with nature, questioning even kings. நீங்க 4 ஔவையார் இருக்கிறாங்க. ஒரு ஔவையார் சினிமால பார்க்குற ஔவையார் மட்டும் கிடையாது. ஔவை 4 பருவத்தில் இருக்கின்ற ஔவை இருக்கிறாங்க. அதுல ஒரு ஔவையார் was a close friend of அதியமான். There was a beautiful poem written by her in which she says, அதாவது அந்த அரசனுக்கு when he has lot of wine to drink and lot of meat to offer, the largest portion he'll always offer to his friends. கள் கிடைத்தாலும் புலால் கிடைத்தாலும் அதில் மிகப்பெரிய பங்கை எங்களோடு பகிர்ந்து உண்பவன் என் நண்பன் அதியமான். Imagine a woman poet reveling herself, dancing, eating the meat and then sharing the wine. கள்ளுண்டு நடனமாடி புலால் உண்டு மகிழ்ந்திருந்த பெண் கவிஞர்களை கண்ட சங்கம். And you have beautifully traced the values and ethics. At the same time, you have also raised important, questions about the contemporary issues in which the present-day women face. And also another important factor I like about your book is the anecdotes with which you carry the flow of the book. It's not just like a jotting of a historian or a researcher. Innumerable stories are threaded in this wonderful book. For example, the story from the Madurai collector to Francis Day and their relationship with the cities. See, Anglo-Indian collectors, how are they emotionally connected with Madurai, the temple city? அதெல்லாம் ரொம்ப அழகா நீங்க கதைகள் மூலமா சொல்றப்போ அதை ஈஸியா the reader can relate to the text rather than reading it as a rigid historical text. You just loosen it a bit. The pleasure of text is very, very important. One postmodern critic has always pointed out, and I think you have not forgotten that fact. Can you just tell us that one story that stayed with you, and why is it so important to you as well as to the readers?
Thank you very much. That's a very lovely question. Actually, because I didn't, the very historical narrative I felt it's important to have stories, because that is a way to attract the reader to what really happened. And I think we cannot see history as a single unilateral narrative that is linear in form. But these additions, true or not true, form part of the public's appreciation of any culture, not just Tamil culture, but all cultures. And also in this case, I think it's also an indication of how Tamils lived with a great deal of appreciation and understanding of multiple people, and there was an acceptance of everybody. One of the stories that she touched on was about Peter Roos, an Englishman who was the collector of the Madurai district and Madurai city. And this was in the British time. And he was a great devotee of goddess Meenakshi. Every day he would cross the temple and he would take his shoes off, bow to the deity, and then proceed to his office. And totally devoted to the goddess. One night, I think there was a terrible storm, and he was woken from a deep slumber to hear the sound of anklets. And a little girl came to him in his dream or whatever it was and said, "Come out, Peter, come out." And when he came out, he found there was a huge thunderstorm and rain and flooding. And this little girl led him out to safety. So basically, he believed it was the goddess Parvati, Meenakshi, who came and took him to safety. And later on, he made a pair of padukas and offered it to the deity. He was so much a part of the local Tamil culture, the Madurai culture, that after retirement, he did not go back to England like many people did, but wanted to be buried so that his face would look towards the shrine. And even today, I think there are padukas near the Madurai temple, and he was known as Peter Pandian.
That's very interesting. We have also Thoolika in Madurai. See, the post-colonial discourse is a very, very important discourse nowadays. In this millennia, we are all taking forward. At the same time, to look at the way the Britishers merged with the local people, trying to a little bit adapt themselves to their stories, to their beliefs, to their emotions, at certain historical junctures is also very, very important. See, we are now in this era, we always say that we have to write our own history against the canonical literature. Now it's our duty to write against the empire. But at the same time, what I admire in your book is you are true to history. You just place the facts before the readers without judging anything. That's for us readers, for the critics. That's very, very important that you have actually knitted it through beautiful stories like this. Also, there is a story about Kudumiyan Malai also. That was an interesting, even I myself am not fully aware of why that name was given to that. And it is so interestingly shared to you by my brother, who himself was an archaeologist, who is very much interested in the ancient Tamil history, who is currently the finance minister of Tamil Nadu. So when I studied that particular story in your book, that was really enchanting and I was thrilled by that. I would like to just know about the name Kudumiyan Malai. Probably that might interest for people like you here in Calicut also. Because ஒரு பெயர் வரலாற்றில் ஏற்கனவே இருந்த ஒரு பெயர் எப்படி மக்களுடைய புழங்கு மொழியால் எப்படி திரிந்து இன்னொரு பெயராக மாறுகிறது என்பது it's a very, very interesting fact for any historian or for any listeners, for any avid readers.
Actually, it's a very lovely story. First of all, Kudumiyan Malai has some wonderful carvings to musical notations going back to the Pallava, and it was a combination of Pallava and Pandya because there is an overlap of territory. So there are fantastic musical notations in the walls of the temple, which I was privileged to see. And also, Thiru Thangapandian told me a marvelous story about how the name occurred. Now, the Tamils are famous for malapropism. The word changes in time and the meaning becomes, and then, it becomes in English, and then first in Tamil, then in English, and now back to Tamil usage. So a lot of the etymology of Tamils is very, very interesting and rich in history. This particular story says something about how it was called Suhagiri, which means hair mountain. So the story is that the priest of the temple had strung a garland and had put it on the deity, and when he offered it to the king found a strand of hair on the garland, and he was very upset, and therefore he said that he condemned the priest for having done that until Shiva came and rescued him. After that, it was called Suhagiri or Hair Mountain, and Hair Mountain is later on became Kudumiyan Malai. So there's a transition from one thing to the other, and this is a very, very common feature of Tamilaham and Tamil stories, and I'd like to think it was always to accommodate the common person, whether it's a British person or something. I think it's a way forward into the language.
Yeah, that's a very important thing. Like having highlighted that thing, I would also like to ask your thoughts about your reference about the bhakti literature, which is a very major movement, because we are talking about the temples and then the way the names have been acclimatized to the local people's usage of it. In a way, I feel that you have highlighted how bhakti movement or the literature, Prabandham, Devaram, Thiruvasakam, have democratized literature through the people's language. அதுதான் தமிழுக்குரிய மிகப்பெரிய அழகுன்னு சொல்லுவோம். அதாவது தமிழ் இளமை, புதுமை, பழமை இவற்றோடு கூடிய இன்றைக்கும் புழங்குகின்ற மொழி. The continuity of the language which has existed, origin 2500 years ago, இப்போ இருக்கிற மக்களோட தொடர்பு கொள்ற ஒரு மொழியா இருக்கிறதுக்கு. The major reason was democratization of its literature also. For example, இப்ப நான் எழுதுறதெல்லாம் என்னுடைய ஊரினுடைய கரிசல் காட்டு வழக்கு மொழியில், the dialectical regional dialect, I write my poems or short stories. In the same way, when the bhakti movement started also, there was a lot of democratization. Can you just throw your thoughts upon it?
That's a very important question, simply because I'll give you a little historical context. Prior to the bhakti movement, which was, say, from 700 BCE to about 900, 200 years of, Shaivite and Vaishnavite saints and saint poets who lived through those 100, 150 years. Prior to that, I think Jainism and Buddhism had a strong hold on Tamil Nadu. And what happened was, and also what you call the Vedic religion or the Hindu religion was very formal and Sanskritic, and temple rituals had all become kind of esoteric and kept away from the common people, which is why they turned to Jainism and Buddhism in the first place. I think the Vedic revivalists, a lot of people who believed, that religion should not be confined to temples, decided to break free from this. That is the 63 Nayanmars and the Alvars, the Vaishnavite and Shaivite poets, who belonged to different categories. They were not the Brahmin priests, they were cobblers, and we know the story of Kannaparu.
Pujaris, yes, Pujari.
And he took his eye and put it on the Shivalinga, and the deity.
Whatever they eat, they offer to their gods, and there is no middleman between God and the commoners.
And the temple rituals were also brought to the, and there were processions started, and particularly Madurai celebrates a lot of processions. I think religion was brought to the people, and those who practiced religion or wrote and preached religion became ordinary people who were not necessarily of the priestly class. And I think that contributed a great deal to democratization.
Having said that, again, I need to just ask you a very important question about questioning certain practices that were existent in the religion. We are in Kerala, and Vaikam movement is a very, very important movement. And we can't just, pass away without mentioning of Periyar. In fact, your significant section of this particular book engages with political movements in Tamil Nadu and their role in shaping Tamil identity. That was another impressive factor. So how do you approach narrating this complex history? See, I would just want you to elucidate one particular point, to reflect on the Vaikam Satyagraha and its connection to the Tamil idea, because we are here, and Kerala is particularly known for its progressive thoughts and movements, and it was Periyar's Vaikam is a place wherein Periyar is just known throughout the world for that one Vaikam Poratam. So can you just, especially you had discussed it elaborately on page number 327, since Periyar is closer to my heart, and Vaikam movement is very closer to the Dravidian modern history also, I thought I'll just pose a question that also for you.
As you know, caste becomes deeply entrenched with each succeeding generation, and starting with the donation of land to the upper castes by kings, slowly it became a stratified thing. Initially, it was to do with the professions that you practiced, but subsequently, the rigidity set in from even the Pallava age. And it came to the point that discrimination was deeply entrenched. I think ideologues and reformers like Periyar were very, very instrumental in while the national movement was going on and the Gandhian struggle was going on. He felt that there were further deeper issues that needed to be addressed, whether it was in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala, where a lot of the upper castes, took captured places like temples, and in fact here in Kerala, I think near the Vaikom temple, certain castes were not allowed. Only higher castes were allowed to use the streets around the temple. And this was an outrage, obviously, to Periyar and other reformists like him. And he came here, and this was the first non-violent struggle. There was an overlap between the Dravidian movement and this at that point. But subsequently, the Dravidian movement was very strongly informed of the need to address this caste issue. And I think that became one of his primary agendas as far as he is concerned. And the non-violent way led him into this thing. It's a highly successful resistance, which I think is part of Dravidian ideology and is practiced to this day by the Tamils.
Yeah, that was a very, very historically important event in the history of Tamils, because even now people will come and ask me, for non-believers, why was there a protest or a movement to enter into temple? See, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in temples, so why do you just engage yourself in such a protest? For them, for those, always Periyar answered, it was about the right of a human being to enter anywhere and everywhere. எங்கேயும் எல்லா இடத்திற்கும் செல்வதற்கு அனைவருக்கும் உரிமை உண்டு என்பதற்காகத்தான் அந்த போராட்டம் என்பதை முதலில் உலகிற்கு பெரியார் சொன்ன இடம் வைக்கம். So I'm so happy to make a mention of it, and she has also in a very elaborate manner touched upon the tying knots with which the Dravidian political movement has been triggered or probably upped up by that one particular event. Then again, I would like to move on to one particular phrase which you used very strongly, because now that we have come to this talk about Periyar, which is also, like against the casteism and against all the divisions in society, you have used, to elucidate your thoughts, the phrase, Tamil by birth, Muslim by faith. I was really taken away by this particular usage of this phrase in your book, because this carries deep political weight today. So what does the history of Tamil Islam tell us about identity formations? And also, like these days of political polarization, the Tamils, like how accommodative and how they were very sure about their upholding their secular rights, especially for the minorities. The Tamil land, of course, the Kerala also, as our brothers, have always been a land which gives hope and always treated them as sons and daughters of their soils. So this phrase is a very important phrase which holds a deep political meaning in today's scenario of polarization. So what made you to choose this phrase? And I feel that has brought out the essence of the Tamil identity also.
It's a very important question, and thank you so much for highlighting that. Simply because, this phrase actually came from my friend Anwar, who is a film historian and has done a beautiful film called Yadum, by which he has traced the syncretic culture where in his small town, where the temple ritual was celebrated, the Muslims contributed, the Muslim population contributed heavily to the temple ritual, and when the procession went by the temple, the Muslims also joined in the procession. This is a marvelous thing to see, and I think, like in Kerala and in Tamil Nadu, that we have continued to resist the polarization and divisiveness that is currently in many parts of India. Very sad to say, and she rightly pointed out, this kind of situation is something that intrinsically not us as a nation, and it's always been inclusive, and unfortunately the prevailing political climate has taken away some of this. But Tamil Nadu and in Kerala, I'd like to think that we continue that secular spirit. And what I learned from Anwar and other Muslim scholars was their origins were all of the local place that they came from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Arab settlers Arabs who came from the Middle East settled in Tamil Nadu and married local women, and they were as Tamil as any other Tamilian. And he said even the mosque structure was initially like the Dravidian temple structure. Much later that they adapted to the the Mughal influence and changed it to domes and things. And honestly, every local town where there's a predominance of Muslims, the practices and customs, whether it's the naming a child or marriage, all very, very similar to the majority community.
It's
And
very, very important at this juncture,
Yes.
wherein erasing of history has become an agenda of the politicians or, See, history has to be presented to the public as it is. Let them decide, let them question, let them rewrite. But it's not the duty of either you or me or anybody who sits in the power to erase history. So that's very important thing that you have pointed out the important features in which the Tamils, grew up as one brethren and sister. And again now, coming to other minority, women. See, there's a saying that there are minorities, some Muslims are minority in certain places and Christians are minority in certain places, but women are minority everywhere. So now, you have actually brought out very, very reformative and progressive women who existed during the freedom struggle also. We have our own Velu Nachiyar much before the Sipai Mutiny, and nobody knows about her much. They all know about Rani, Jhansi Rani, but Velu Nachiyar, very few people. So you have brought about, for example, stories such as Ambujammal. You recite her story and then you say that Tamil women those days, from the history, they were active agents of reforms rather than passive recipients. So why do you think these histories continue, remain marginal in national narrative, even now? What is the past? Because you have highlighted Tamil women have been progressive reformers right from Sangam age. And even now the glass ceiling exists, even now, women in public spaces have been questioned and there are taboos. And as a woman who is actively engaged in publishing industry and who has written a wonderful book about it, how do we orchestrate this space?
Thank you, but I think that this is a very deep-seated issue of patriarchy, which I think abounds not just in Tamil society, but everywhere. And I'm sure she herself has faced a lot as a parliamentarian. I mean, you can extremely well educated, exposed, everything, but then there is a gender divide. It's not just in this country, but I think all over the world, women continue to fight discrimination. Women continue to speak in a public space and want to articulate who they are. But constant barriers and constant roadblocks keep coming our way, which is why I think we need to be inspired by people from different eras who have waged a lonely struggle sometimes, whether it's about, like I said, like she mentioned, Gandhian women in the Gandhian movement like Ambujammal, or, Muthu Lakshmi Reddy, who worked to bring, the Devdasis into the mainstream. And of course, they were opposing people.
Muthu Lakshmi, Dr. Muthu Lakshmi, I believe you must all be familiar with that interesting anecdote which has happened in the history of Tamil Nadu. Dr. Muthu Lakshmi was the first woman member of the Legislative Council, and she was the one who brought that, she was voicing for the abolishment of the Devadasi system. When she was bringing that act, when she was talking about that in the assembly, one of the senior Congress leaders stood up and then he was all for retaining the Devadasi system. He argued that if you abolish Devadasi system, what will happen to the family system of Tamil Nadu? For that, Muthu Lakshmi, without battling her eyelids, she stood up and said, okay, now I'm retreating, I can take back my words, but for some time, why don't women from your family engage in Devadasi system? So for particular community, women were involved in that. Since you were so advocative about keeping that system, why don't for a change, why don't women from your family come into that? How daringly Muthu Lakshmi spoke about that, and you have mentioned about that also, and I'm so happy about it, yes.
Thank you. That was a very important point that even at her level of achievement, there was resistance to, getting rid of a wholly, terrible system of enslavement of women. So thank you for that.
Again, there is a general taboo that Indian cultures were historically inward-looking. It is just a taboo. But you have broken that myth. You describe ports like Puhar as cosmopolitan. She has elaborately dealt with the three important dynasties, Chera, Chola, Pandya, and the way in which she had described the port city Puhar as a cosmopolitan hub with traders from Rome and China, breaks the taboo and the myth that Indian culture was inward-looking. It was globally active then, in that century onwards. And we, now in this millennia, we are just sitting and boasting that we are globally going forward when ancient Tamils did that way back long, long ago. And it was such a mesmerizing thing. Can you just, how were you mesmerized by looking at Puhar in your eyes?
This is one of the joys of, discovery of archaeology. And this is not just a romantic thing of, that we've heard in the literary accounts that there was trade, but this has been borne out by the discovery of Roman coins in places like Puhar and, Korkain and other places, which shows that there was a global culture and people were sailors came from there. And then there's also an anonymous log of a sailor called the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, where he traveled to the Pandyan kingdom and described the wealth that was there in South India. It was not just in the Tamil shores, but all across the west coast, the east coast, across South India, where so many riches were abundant. And he wrote about that. So there was a culture of trade, and people from not only from abroad, but people from the north came to the south, because this is also evident in potsherds, small bits of mud pots that were discovered in archaeological remains, which had words in Pali and Prakrit, which are not at all Tamil. But then if they were found here, it means how did they come? They traveled here, and trade as well as, interactions put us as a global culture even then.
That's really wonderful. There's one final question for you, sort of a conversation only. After 4 years of research, writing and conversation, has your own question, because you began this book with the inner question, what does it mean to be Tamil? That's how you began. So has your own answer to the question, after these research, after meeting all the experts, and then field visits, going down the memory lane, all these things, has your own answer to the question, what does it mean to be Tamil, changed? Or what is your summing up perspective of what does it mean to be Tamil?
That's a very tough question. But I must say that I think I have a few glimpses of what the Tamil spirit is and what lives on, as it does in many communities. I don't want to claim any exceptionalism about Tamil, except to say that there's a continuity of, as she mentioned earlier, 2,500 or even before that, continuity of language. So that is something that may or may not be special to the Tamil civilization. The continuity which makes the Sangam age Tamil or the oratorical Tamil as relevant to the ordinary person on the street. When politicians talk from stages and daises, they are understood by ordinary people, and I think that's a really great gift that the language has given us. And one more thing I would say is, you can't claim any exceptions. You may say a Tamil person is more mathematically inclined or whatever. You may say all those things, but I think other communities can claim that as well. But in addition to this connect with the language, which is rich and continuous, and unlike, you can't talk Elizabethan England and London and be understood. Whereas you speak Sangam Tamil, or she recited some beautiful things in poetry earlier, that can be understood by the person on the street. I think that's exceptional. And also the ties that we have to our ur or our place is very, very important, and I'm sure it happens elsewhere. I don't want to, again, claim any exceptionalism, but I do think that's a particularly important thing for the Tamil person to continuously have a relationship with where he came from, to pay respect to the ancestors and to people who made him who he is. So I think these are the 2-3 beautiful things about Tamil which I understood after working on this book. And of course, my eyes have been opened to the great beauty of language, of people, ordinary people who walk the streets, walk the villages with pride. And not to say that we don't have problems, we have terrible rift among castes and we have divisions. But notwithstanding all that, there is a sense of beauty and pride which could be in other communities. Like, sorry, I keep repeating that because it's important to understand. I'm not claiming that Tamils are in any way more special than others, but certainly for us, there's a great joy and pride in being Tamil.
Spirit asks, பிறப்பொக்கும் எல்லா உயிர்க்கும் யாதும் ஊரே யாவரும் கேள்வி. You are deeply rooted in your uru, in your soil. At the same time, you are globally accommodating, welcoming, adapted to any other culture, any other race or religion. எல்லோரும் எங்களுடைய உறவினர். கேளீர் means எங்களுடைய உறவினர். That's the Tamil spirit, I would say. And now it's the time. We have 10 minutes for the questions. It's open to the house.
Good afternoon, ma'am. There was a dark age in Tamil history. Kalapirargal Kalam. Kalapirargal. So what is our Kalapirargal? There was a dark age, Tamil culture, which we called as Kalapirargal.
Kalapirargal, Irinda Kalam.
What is your interpretation of that?
You have written about Kalapirar age. He's asking.
This is a very important question because there's been a revision. There's a period of Tamil history from say 300 CE, that is a common era, 300 CE to about 600, a period of 300 years in which there was no information. Earlier historians called it the dark period, and they tried to say that there was a group of rogue kings or rulers who obliterated everything that there was in culture. But that is not true. There's an inscription called the Pulanguruchi inscription, which I was privileged to see, where it clearly, Kalapirar king has written about land reform, administration, donation by him and to the local temple. So it was just that there was no documentation. So there's a revision now of perception to say that there's not enough information. It was certainly not the dark age. And thank you for asking that question, because this is a misunderstanding that needs to be cleared up. And it's certainly a period from which we hope there'll be more archaeological evidence. But as of now, there's only that one inscription, the Pulanguruchi inscription, which describes what happened at part of that time. Oh, thank you.
Well, at the outset, I really enjoyed this session because Thamizhachi Thangapandian was asking very pertinent and very logical and even marvelous questions to you, for which I really extend to my compliments.
Thank you.
Well, one point that I want to have discussion with, to discuss with you is how much the tradition of Periyar, who fought against the caste discrimination, is still prevalent in Tamil Nadu. Because I'm a reader of your paper, Hindu, and of course, by through only Hindu I can understand what is happening in Tamil Nadu politics. Still, I feel in the social structure, there is rampant untouchability. Of course, I don't say untouchability, but caste discrimination is very much rampant in Tamil Nadu. The legacy of Periyar is absolutely in an injurious position, what I feel. Am I right or not? I don't know. Can you clarify? Anybody?
Can I answer this question? Please do. Can I answer this question?
No problem.
Because Tamil Nadu is the only state which has had a history of 50 years history of rationalist, progressive, liberalist movement. See, whenever the Dravidian parties come to power, especially the first time when the party to which I belong to power, DMK, came to power, whatever Periyar envisioned, or whatever Periyar tried to break ahead, acts were formed on it and rules were formed on it. That's how we envisioned Periyar Samattuvapuram. You can go and see even in Tamil Nadu, for any system there are resistances. But imagine Tamil Nadu 50 years ago, wherein people belonging to lower castes are not allowed to enter into certain streets, wherein they are not allowed to dig water from the public wells, wherein they were not allowed to enter into temple. You have to now see how far we have come away. I don't deny there are, but there are always exceptions. There are always even conservatives, especially in this time of polarizing people in the name of religion, caste. These forces are taking upper hand, I don't deny. But you have to see the steady progress. I would like to highlight especially the Dravidian movement. For example, to enter into a medical college, before Justice Party came into power, a knowledge in Sanskrit, expertise in Sanskrit is a must. We have broken that. That's why we now say that, like in any sort of entrance examination is again preventing the right to education. So every act which is being imposed for the public in the government sphere, as law, enacted as law, is a movement towards this. Periyar Samattuvapuram, especially the bringing all the kids up to till 8th standard, the right to education, it prevents the discrimination. Only certain upper class people or certain rich people were able to enjoy the right of getting education. So you have to seriously, clearly read different periods in Tamil Nadu history for the past 50 years and make note of what are all the ways in which the temples, the entrance to temples, in the field of education, in the field of women empowerment. It was in 1986, first state in India, Tamil Nadu, made the law the property rights to women. Way back in 1986. Periyar dreamt of it 50 years ago, and it was DMK which has made it as a law. All these things. And Anethu Sadhinarum Archakaragalam. Anybody who belongs to any caste can be a priest, which was an act by the Dravidian party, especially by DMK. And you can see some 7 or 8 members being incorporated as priests. So, we have to remember the fact that Periyar's principles or dreams, whatever he envisioned, have been put into action. Whenever I would proudly say that our DMK party, Kalaignar or the present Chief Minister, Muthuvel Karunanidhi Stalin, we always say that, we always think about the underprivileged, marginalized people, especially also with the women also, encompassing their rights totally into the law system. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Raghuram. I am a doctor practicing in Panjeri. I'm also a writer. I write in 3 languages, English, Malayalam and Tamil. And one thing common with erudite speakers here is that I also come from Chennai, where I had my schooling, and I studied Tamil there. So it's a pleasure to listen to Professor Nirmala Lakshman and Professor Thamizhachi Thangapandian. And I do translations from Tamil to Malayalam, as well as Malayalam to Tamil, including poetry of our esteemed MP.
Yeah, that I have to state that Sir has translated my poems into Malayalam, and it's getting launched tomorrow. That's a discussion on my. So he's very well versed in both the languages, and I'm indeed grateful to him for having done that wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Only one question to Professor Nirmala Lakshman is regarding the difficulty of translation. You are translating a lot of ancient concepts in Tamil, Karpu and Odukam and so many things. So how did you bring it across in your English text? That's the only thing I wanted to ask you. Thank you.
That's a very important question. Thank you, sir, for raising that. This I found that a great deal of difficulty to do this, and I was very, very kindly assisted by people like Professor Vedachalam, who's written a lot on the Pandya dynasty. And while I read his text in Tamil, he pointed out what were the salient aspects that needed to be left out. Because, not being a great scholar of Tamil, but one who can just, there's a passing readability that I have. I found it very, very difficult and had to rely on translations. About Madurai Kanchi, there are translations. Then A.K. Ramanujam, U.V. Swaminathan, all of their work has been translated. And I mean, it is my shortcoming. But I couldn't read it in the original Tamil, which is, some things that some of us, I think, have to apologize.
You have done your best, Nirmala, I would say. Because you can never have 100% translated. George Steiner said, நெருப்பென்பது சாம்பலின் மொழிபெயர்ப்பாகுமா. அம்மா புதுமை பித்தன்லாம் சொன்னாரு, மொழிபெயர்ப்புங்கிறது கீற்று வேயப்பட்ட கீற்று எடுத்துட்டு நீங்க செங்கற்களை வைக்கிறது அப்படின்னு. As a translator, 100% translation is not possible, but I personally, as one who has read through his book, she has captured certain phrases she has transliterated. அப்படியே எடுத்திருக்கிறாங்க, தமிழ்லே அப்படியே கொண்டு வந்திருக்கிறாங்க. So that the spirit can be transported to the readers.
Thank you.
My one question is, did Cheras have a significant contribution during the Sangam era?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the Sangam literature came from the Chera rulers, and there's been a documentation of the 10 Chera kings in Sangam poetry, and definitely it was much later that this became a separate state. But I think initially, and Malayalam, of course, came into prominence from, say, 600, 700 CE, started developing its own thing. But before that, in the Sangam poetry, there's a lot of reference to the Chera rulers, and in fact, I think it's much more pronounced. It's much more clearly identified than some of the other Pandya or the Chola rulers, the early Cholas and the early Pandyas. Cheras are very distinctly acknowledged in the Sangam poetry.
Some of the Cheran kings were poets themselves. Nedunjera to say that.
Yeah.
Most of the Cheran kings they themselves were good poets.
Absolutely.
Wrote absolutely wonderful poetry also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the questions. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thamizhachi. Really appreciate it. Thank you.